Once upon a time, there was a sculptor so in love with beauty as a form, he spurned his lover, and instead carved for himself a woman of ivory perfection. But even though his desperate love at last gave life to the statue he loved more than life, her first step was away from him. She could not bear his heart of stone. At first, Mythos said, it seemed to be only those who were directly affected by the misshapen story, those who faced the darkest night, but now it seems to be spreading to the entire town. I think it's because all the townsfolk were in the background of Drosselmeyer's original tale. We still don't know how to turn the townsfolk back into humans, or why the curse of the story is turning into statues. Fakir demanded as soon as Rue and Mythos had finished informing him of the worsening situation. I think, Duck ventured, I can help them as Princess Tutu. You can hardly dance with them at all! Rue and Fakir protested at the same time before glaring at each other. There must be some other way, Rue continued. The story was our only past. Now we have no past, so we have no future. That's what the bookman said before he turned to stone. Rue mused. Fakir glared at her accusingly. And you didn't think to mention this earlier? He was half mad with panic and fear, she snapped back. Most of what he said was incoherent gibberish. Do you want to hear all of that too? He opened his mouth, scathing a response on his tongue. Before he could make the argument worse, Duck interrupted quietly. We had to work together. Fakir looked away and admitted without looking in Rue's direction. Sorry, he grumbled. More for Duck's sake than Rue's. I'm not thinking straight. Now she was as concerned about Duck's health made the grudging apology a little easier, but not by much. Rue sighed, sitting inside her own anchor. I wish Tutu were here. I think he had a better idea what was happening than any of us do. But going back to what you said, Duck ventured in a moment, that sounds like what Peak said too. That she couldn't move because she couldn't remember who she was anymore. She paused, frowning in thought. It all felt really familiar. Just like when the oak tree awakened my memories. Fakir's eyes widened in realization. He abruptly turned and strode out the door. Through statue-lined streets, wishing he had thought of this earlier. He had been going about it the wrong way from the start, looking at books. That was hardly a strong point. He wasted so much time because of his mistake, and now it might be too late. But regrets were worse than useless, he knew. All he could do was press forward and hope it would be enough. Fakir rushed toward the oak tree, toward the stone behind the museum Autor had shown him what felt like a lifetime ago. It was the only place he could think of to seek for answers now. As he placed his hand on the stone once more, he lost all sense of place, and even of urgency, and had to consistently remind himself to draw away from all the promise of endless stories that the tree's very presence evoked in him. Ah, Spinner, you have returned. The memory of Localise sighed. He forced his mind away from the stories that tugged and drew at him as he fell through the endless light of the tree's being. You know, don't you? Your roots run through this entire place. What's happening to the town? You wrote a story. It's not the revenge of the story on its characters. No, not revenge, but the despair of the forgotten memory. Stories remember the past, and you wrote a story that eased the memory of it from those who lived it. But now, even that last trace, the last recording of this past has vanished in smoke. If the story is forgotten, its characters too shall forget how to live. Then, to fix this, all I need is to write another story. Only when the winged princess calls out of darkness to darkness, another from memory to memory, and a newborn story rises from the ashes of old, only then will stone turn to flesh, art to life. The urgency had been seeping out of Fakir in the face of the tree's mesmerizing serenity, returned to him in full force. What use are mad prophecy and riddles? He demanded, fear lacing his voice, for he could already tell just who the winged princess would have to be. But the tree merely repeated its words, and he knew unless he drew back from it now, he'd forget his purpose in the pool of the plots that surrounded him. It was drug desire, and called to lose himself in the siren song of an infinite number of unspun stories. But even as one part of his mind tugged toward another was entirely different to its call. What did he care for that now? It would fall to Duck again to save them. And thinking how small and pale she looked in that hospital bed, he despaired for her. Real, Duck fretted quietly, plucking at her blanket, and then constantly began to visit with the pendant around her neck. I'm worried. The first time Fakir almost lost who he is. Mythos dozed uneasily in the chair by the bed. Rue had insisted he rest there, for there was no point in wearing themselves out, now when they could certainly need all the strength they would have to face the task before them. And when he had resisted, Rue had scolded. Duck had smiled to see the easy intimacy between them, happy that the wary anxiety he had seen her friend's eyes when he first appeared in the Gold Crown town was gone. Duck had slyly teased the older girl about it when Mythos had left the room so Rue could help Duck change the bandages that still swathed her chest. Rue had pretended to be annoyed, if only to distract herself from the worry that overcame her at seeing how Duck's recent exertions had caused the wound to bleed again a little. Duck looked down at last at the egg-shaped stone in her fingers, and marveled again at how the two shades of red within it seemed to twine together, constantly moving and constantly changing, but never parting. Really, it looked more like a bead of amber, which had never hardened on the inside, rather than a gem. Is there any way I could go and make sure he's okay? Hearing the desperate concern in Duck's voice, a concern which Rue could understand all too well, the older girl relented at last. Fine, but if we go, you will listen to me. Rue forbade Duck to get up, and instead hunted out a wheelchair from one of the hospital supply rooms. They made a curious progression through their statue-filled town, Mythos pushing Duck's chair while Rue walked at her side. They found Fakir sitting listlessly before a stone in an empty field. He did not seem to be in the trance of the tree, and even more worried at his stillness, Duck called out the same. He turned at her voice, seeing the worrying look in her eyes. He knew he would not be able to lie to her, and save her from the knowledge that would certainly doom her. He made a promise. We need Artur to figure this out, Rue said at last in weary resignation. The words that Fakir had repeated made almost no sense. All they could agree on was the identity of the winged princess, but what exactly was he meant to do, or how a story would rise from its ashes, escaped him. No, Fakir said savagely. We are not risking her life for that piece of scum. Fakir, what did I say about letting me make my decisions? You promised! And you promised to be less stupid in the future. I hate to say this, Mythos said to their stalemate, but I don't think we have much of a choice. Fakir stared at his prince a long moment in silence before asking evenly, And are you putting their lives before hers again? As though Mythos did not flinch, Fakir could see the pain in his eyes, despite the resolute set in his mouth. No, Fakir, Duck interrupted firmly. I am. Fool! He spat out the word viciously and stalked away from the others, staring into nothingness where only brief moments ago there had been before him a massive tree made of endless light and the promise of unending stories. Why couldn't she see that her life was something so precious it was worth guarding and hoarding and keeping safe at all costs? But Duck would not be moved. She had made her choice, and now Fakir would have to make his. Will you help me, Fakir, as you did before? Will you write me a story? And though there were still traces of anger in his voice, he answered without hesitating, because he knew what Duck was really asking him was, will we act together or alone? Every story I will ever write is yours. The four of them walked to the academy in silence, Rue and Mythos lingering slightly behind to give the other two a little privacy. Both Prince and Princess watched from a distance as Fakir pushed Duck's wheelchair, his head tilted slightly forward as he bent to catch her words. Do you not agree, my princess, that he truly loves her? Mythos couldn't help asking Rue, wanting peace between his princess and his knight. That he means her no harm? Rue merely sniffed dismissively in response, refusing to concede anything. But he did not miss how her gaze softened as it landed on the pair before them. They parted the ways to the library, Fakir to go to his carrel to begin a story, and the other to the practice room where some pianist played silently. Fakir caught Mythos' eyes with his own, Well, it was en route that Fakir's gaze lingered at the man, and he begged, "Take care of her," and walked away, disregarding Duck's indignant protest that she could take care of herself just fine. As Rue and Mythos stood to the side, Duck stepped out of the wheelchair and towards the marble figure at the piano, closing her eyes and calling out his name in her mind. The pendant's light washed over her. Princess Tutu, the winged ballerina, stood before the statue. In the library, in silence his only audience, Fakir lifted a quill and wrote, "Into the darkness, Princess Tutu reached out the wing." So he approached Auteur on point, delicately, stepping through the darkness to the boy hunched up on bareness at the center of a darkened stage. Her body trembled with fatigue, but she pushed to the considerations of her mind. The pendant, one heart linked to another, took her pain and weariness into itself. She could hear Fakir's words helping her, supporting her, as the danseur supported the ballerina, so that together they wrought something otherwise impossible. The egg-shaped pendant flared a warm, soothing light fell to her, easing her aching, tired body, and giving her the energy to continue. "Attila?" She stood before the wretched boy, who had not seen her, his head still bent. She curved one wing above her head, miming as he spoke. "Let's dance together." Arturo looked up at last, drawn away from the errant demons that gazed at her in awe and disbelief. And though he had never wished to dance, never felt the impulse to do so before in his life, piano keys seemed to strike his own heartstrings, and express so entirely any emotion he held, he somehow found himself rising, reaching for her outstretched wing. "So, you are the Duck that started it all," he said with wonder as he stepped forward. "Even with the wings, it's hard to believe." He cocked his head to the side, as if listening to something far away, a music only he could hear. "He's writing you a story now, isn't he?" Princess Tutu performed a mabaresque, her brow puckering in confusion. "If you remember who Fakir is, you know about me, then you must remember who you are. You have a past and a future. What's keeping you trapped here?" He laughed mockingly, even as his glasses hid his eyes at expression. "Who said anything about having a future? I followed my dream as far as I could, even when fate thwarted me, and now I could go no further. That is the curse the story laid on me, the curse of my own limitations." "If there are no limits, you can write those stories you want more than all the world. What then?" "What then? What does that matter? I will have written them." "But then your dream itself doesn't give you a future. Can't imagine a future for you. Why do you hold on to a dream that brings you nothing but pain?" He frowned, puzzled by her question. "Because it's a dream I've had all my life. To write, to change the world with my words. Ever since I could hold a quill, I've tried and failed to spin tales. Then when I at last found a way to change reality even a little, this was all I could manage." He gestured at the empty stage they danced on. "But is this the only way you could change it? Is this the only way you could shape it? We need you. We need your hard-earned knowledge to help change the terrible reality that's taken hold within the walls of the Grow Town even now. Won't you work with us? Make a new future together?" She crossed her wings before her, asking for her help in gestures and in words. "And that's why you've come," he said, trying to hold on to resentment that seemed to slip with each graceful step she took. "You come when you need me, and toss me aside otherwise. Would you have been happy to leave me as stone if you didn't need my help?" "No!" she cried, with such feeling that she was taken aback. "Your existence is precious to all those around you. I know," she said with such sadness, and raised a leg and curved behind her as her body moved a slow, graceful turn. "It hurts and aches when someone you love vanishes without a trace. You miss them even if you don't remember what it is you're missing. Even if the details vanish, you know you've lost something precious." Sorrow she mined, and loneliness, her wings tracing a track of festival tears down her cheeks. "I would never want that to happen to you, or to those who love you. I don't want that to happen to anyone, and that's why I'm asking you. Will you help us free the town from this curse?" she implored again, curving a wing before her. He had not known, had not believed so much sincerity and goodwill could exist in all the world, let alone in one girl he barely knew. "And now I begin to see," he remarked, taking her outstretched wing and bowing over it. Just how you danced hope into Drosselmeyer's story itself. I can't help wanting to follow you. The hope you offer is such a tantalizing thing. He let her lead him out of the darkness, out of stone and barrenness. When Artur came to, he found himself lying on the practice room floor. A figure stood idly by the large knife-filled windows. The edges were blurry. He reached out with a blind hand and found, to his relief, his glasses placed beside him. Fakir came to focus, and Artur frowned, wondering if he dreamed everything. Was she even real? He found himself asking without meaning to. The dark-haired boy turned to him in question, a grim, murderous expression on his face. Very real. So exhausted from dealing with you, it's a miracle she didn't collapse from pain in the middle of it. Fakir had insisted that Rue and Mythos carry Duck back to the infirmary, so she could rest, even though there were no nurses or doctors to care for her anymore, all of them having been turned to marble. Mythos had said he would look in on the ravens if Rue had left, pushing Duck's wheelchair with the tired girl slumped into it, falling asleep almost immediately. Fakir had insisted on staying with the musician for whom they had risked so much. Artur knit his brows, utterly lost. Then why did she help me? He asked, sitting up carefully. His lips felt still, and he was unsure if it was from lying on the cold, hard practice room floor, or from the lingering effects of the curse. Fakir resisted the urge to strike the other boy at that question. He himself had asked it countless times now, and no answer keen enough seemed worth the words he had taken. She might have forgiven you for your hand in this, he said evenly, but I would have gladly left you as a statue for what you'd done. Artur sneered. So much easier to hold me accountable for what you did, isn't it? No, not that. I alone called forth the darkest night within me. I alone wielded that sword to end my sorrow, however much you wish to credit without responsibility. Fakir said violently, knowing that this denial of Artur's manipulation would hurt the boy more than any accusation hurled at him. But I trusted you, and you betrayed me. You thought of only yourself, writing for your own selfless ends and rubbing my face in it. What would you have me do, Arthur? Fakir snapped back wearily. Could they ever be allies again? Had they ever been allies, or had their goals merely coincided for a time, and he had been the only one foolish enough to think it was more than that? Cut off my hand and give it to you? If you know anything of temptation? Fakir closed his eyes for a moment, remembering that just he had lured him down the path of darkest night. I have known the temptation of despair, he responded at last, but never of that power. And that's why it's wasted on you. Artur sighed, but I began to realize now that regret is a far greater voice than even that. Rue was waiting for them outside Duck's room. How is she? Resting, Rue sighed. At least this time the wound didn't start bleeding again. Fakir closed his eyes for a moment. And Mythos, gone to feed the ravens. A part of Fakir marveled at how, after a lifetime in anonymity, he and Rue seemed to have fallen into such an easy understanding of each other. Perhaps it came from both of them having to look after such a well-meaning but reckless individuals as Mythos and Duck. He stepped to the room, sitting beside Duck, waiting until she woke, until they had all gathered and had no choice but to wake her. As Fakir pressed a strand out of Duck's face, Rue turned away, facing Artur, who was still sitting in the doorway. You asked me once, how would I go out of the world if it were ending? I give the question back to you now. What will you do? Artur looked beyond her for a moment, eyes resting on a small slip of a girl in the hospital bed. Help change things so it won't end. Like she asked me to.